Hello, so this is part 2 of my ultimate guide to repressed anger. In part 1, I covered what anger repression is, why we repress our anger, the consequences, the negative consequences of it, and the benefits that we can reap when we learn to connect to it again and express it, the way we can connect to our strength, our authenticity, our boundaries, our sense of self in the world, and just be ourselves like a rock in the world. So it's a really, really important topic. I talked a little bit about how it's been absolutely one of the most transformative healing approaches I've taken. Just transforming and transmuting my anger really helped a lot of my health issues and helped me be far less anxious, much more connected to myself, much more authentic in so many ways. It's such a powerful energy, and it can bring so much to us when we connect to it. And that's why we're talking about it today. And part 2 is the practical aspects of how to actually feel and process your anger. What do you actually do? I covered all the theory in part 1. Now we're going to jump into part 2. Quick safety announcement. When it comes to allowing and feeling anger, I'm not talking about acting out your anger. So this isn't a license to lash out at people, to hurt them in any way, to harm others. If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. And please, watch my the previous video and this one a little bit more carefully, because when you're doing it right, it's constructive for you and other people. And we're really talking about feeling the actual energy of anger in your body, not about behaving angrily in the world. Those are two very separate things, and that's important to clarify. Also, for many of us, due to the experiences we've had in life, we faced abuses of various kinds in which our anger, had we been angry at those people who are abusing us, it would have been a life-threatening situation potentially. And so for certain people, starting to get in touch with their anger can feel very, very threatening. And as soon as you even start to go towards it, the body starts to go numb or disconnect or dissociate. And in those cases, I would just invite people to go very slowly, step by step, really resourcing themselves well, so that you do it in a way that's safe. So if you start to feel numb, start to disconnect, dissociate, please stop and take a step back and resource yourself. And we'll talk about what that all means in this video. So check out part 1 if you haven't already. That's got all the theory. Now let's jump into the practice. So we're going to look at some of the principles of how to feel anger. Then I'll go through the various steps of how you actually process it and integrate it. And then a couple of words at the end about what might happen and how to deal with triggers and so on. So the first principle is that there are 3 ways that we can approach anger. The first way is that we repress it. We're taught that it's not safe to allow or express our anger. And so when it comes up, whoosh, we push it straight back down. That's what most people are doing with it. On the other extreme, there is acting out our anger. This is when we're indirectly, unconsciously, impulsively expressing our anger. So rather than acknowledging, okay, I feel angry, we slam the door or we yell at someone, we lash out in some way. These are ways we act out the anger. That's harmful to ourselves and to other people. The middle way, which is what I want to teach here, is where we're really present with the emotion of anger. We acknowledge it, but we're present in the body, in our own inner experience, and we're letting that inner experience be itself and unfold as it wants to, as it needs to, in order to complete. And when we do that, that anger integrates. That disconnected, repressed anger integrates into us and becomes part of our capacities as a being. And that's the authenticity and the strength I spoke about at the beginning. So how you feel something, there are 3 pillars. 1, your attention has to be on it. So your attention's not on your thoughts, not on other people, not on what they're doing. The attention's on the energy of anger in your body. The second pillar is that you let it be itself as much as you're able. So by this I mean that you let the anger move how it wants to. Maybe it wants to express through the body in some way. Maybe there's some sounds that want to come with it. Think about how a 3-year-old kind of expresses or feels anger. It's really letting it be itself. Now 3-year-olds, sometimes they can kind of lose control. It's a bit overwhelming for them. You don't want to go that far. I'm just thinking about kind of the freedom with which they express themselves and allow it. That's kind of the direction we want to go in. Thirdly, we acknowledge and have dealt with the resistance or the protector parts. This is very important with anger because there are so many protector parts that come in to hold that anger back and to keep us safe, because it feels like expressing our anger is really risky. And so it's important that we don't bulldoze that resistance out the way, that we really listen to and meet those protector parts so they can feel safe enough to relax. And when they do relax, that's when, we can really start to feel that anger. And we'll talk about that towards the end. So 1, attention on the anger. 2, we are letting it move and express. 3, we've dealt with the resistance to it. When that happens, you'll find that anger has a kind of a cycle. Like it's arisen to protect you. That's its function. And it wants to complete that mission. And so there's a limited amount of anger and it has a certain cycle. So, say it wants to push someone away to protect you. If you let that action complete itself, it will eventually integrate and subside. It doesn't just continue forever. So our goal is to try and get in touch with that anger and let that cycle complete, at which point you'll start to feel more spacious and you'll start to feel better. Like it's the anger will have gone all the way around and you'll go back to the beginning again. How we want to approach this is we first need to be resourced. We need to feel safe. Safety here means that it's manageable or acceptable for us to be present with the anger. We can put our attention on it and we don't have to disconnect. It's not too overwhelming for us. We don't have to disconnect, go into the mind or dissociate from the body. We do that through what I call resourcing. So this is creating islands of safety in our experience or bringing in supportive aspects. This could be feeling our feet on the ground. It could be imagining a safe place. It could be imagining a good friend who's supporting us, our higher self. There are many ways. Check out my video on resourcing that goes into a lot of detail on that. That's the first sort of capacity we need. The second one is that we need to have, I just used the word capacity, but this is the second thing that we need is an actual capacity, a nervous system capacity to be present with it. So we need to have trained our nervous system to be strong and resilient enough to hold and meet that energy of anger. And if it's not resilient enough yet, then we need to do some more work sort of connecting to the body and practicing being present in our body to build that tolerance. So that's the second thing we need is capacity to be with it. And the third is presence. We need to bring our presence to that anger. So we need to, just like you'd be present with a friend when they're telling you an important story or an important communication, you want to be with your anger in the same way, open, present. So you're really listening to it, to what it has to say, to how it wants to move, and so on. And this includes kind of staying in control. If we're letting the anger fly everywhere and we're losing our mind, we're not present with it, right? So it can be intense. That's okay. And that can be helpful. Sometimes it needs to be intense when it's moving through, but we need to maintain that presence and that sense of control and groundedness. So again, we want to be well resourced. We want to have that capacity to be present, and we want to then bring that presence and groundedness. Then we're ready to go. So the steps is what we're going to explore next. How do we actually go about feeling the anger? This is the juice. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? So there are sort of 5 steps I've kind of got here. The first one is resourcing ourselves. The second one is triggering up the anger or inviting in the anger. The third one is actually feeling it, processing it, allowing it, embodying it. The fourth one is noticing and working with protector parts or resistance, which is a key part of the process that a lot of people overlook. A lot of therapists and sort of healers and so on, they really overlook this part too. But it's absolutely critical here with anger because we resist it so much. We're so protected from it. And then the fifth part is sort of bringing it all together and the flow of moving between our resource, the anger itself, and the parts that protect it. And you kind of go in this triangle of that helps you, you're not just being with the anger, because then you'll be under-resourced or you'll just get stuck. You've got to move wisely between that safety, the anger itself, and the parts that are protecting it. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. So first, you want to resource yourself. I won't go into too much detail here. Check out my resourcing video, or I've got other resources on my website, but you just want to spend some time grounding. Maybe you feel your feet on the floor. Maybe you visit that safe place. Maybe you've got your hands on your heart, on your belly. Maybe you imagine Jesus or Gandalf is at your side, ready to kick ass with you. And that helps you to feel a bit stronger, a bit more present in yourself, right? Whatever it is. Then you want to invite in the anger in some way. So I'd recommend, when you're starting this, don't bring in the thing that makes you most angry in the universe. You want mild triggers first. So you can use your mind. That's how we do it, to get in touch with our anger. So you might bring to bear a memory of a time, maybe it's last week, that someone irritated you. There was someone playing music on the bus, right? And there's this, you just felt this it's like, God, I just want to grab his phone and throw it out the window, right? And the key is to really connect to that memory, bring up the memory, and find that exact moment when you kind of realized, okay, I'm angry, that exact moment that triggered you, that poked you. And then just stay there and let it land, let your body respond. And you may start noticing some of that anger, some of that irritation. It's worth noting here that under the rubric of anger, I include a very broad range of emotions. That includes irritation, annoyance, resentment, frustration, rage, the fight response, which is more to do with, pushing, physical confrontation. All these are sort of come under the basic rubric of anger, as I'm talking about it today, at least. So maybe you straight away start to notice it. It may be the case that you instantly start to notice protector parts instead. You can tell the difference because anger typically has a bit of a vibration, a bit of a heat to it, and it wants to move, right? So that's the key sign. You can tell it's anger because it wants to move or express in some way. And that might just be vibrating, with that heat, that fire of anger in your chest. That might be all it is. Or maybe it wants to push or clench or yell. But protector parts tend to be immobilizing in some way. So it might be tension in the body. You might feel kind of frozen or stuck. You might get thoughts, questioning. It's like, oh, no, don't worry about that. And I'll get more into this a bit later on. But it's important to know that you might just instantly feel protector parts come in which case I would, just wait until the part of the video where I'm talking about resistance and protector parts, and then just start with that. So you're dealing with those protector parts first. But say there's a bit of anger that starts to come up. That's because you're using your mind to trigger it up. And then you can even imagine fictional scenarios that would make you mad. Say even if there is no one that was playing music on the bus, you could imagine that there was someone playing music on the bus and that made you annoyed. Or you could imagine that your mother forgets your birthday or something like that. Whatever it is. You can, the key is just to use the mind to bring that up in some way. Now we get to the stage of processing the anger. So the first thing is to discern where you're feeling it in the body. Maybe it's, like I said, vibration in the chest. Maybe it's sort of a heaviness in the belly. And then just getting curious, bringing a mindset of curiosity and openness to this feeling, just exploring it with that curiosity, like you've got an object that you're picking up and kind of looking at in the light and just looking at the different facets of it. It can be helpful then to just acknowledge, okay, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. Kind of validating this emotion in yourself. So you discern it, you validate it, then we start to feel it. How do you do this? You put your attention on it, and then you let it be itself. This starts with letting it, maybe letting it move in some way. Again, maybe that just means it's vibrating there in the chest, or you just feel that heat in your chest. Maybe you just stay there. Maybe that's enough. That can be enough to feel your anger. Okay, I'm angry, okay, and just feeling it there in the chest vibrating, which means your attention is on it. and you're open and curious. Often you'll find that movements want to come in. So it can be really helpful to stand up when you're doing anger. I'm going to remain seated so I can shoot this video, but it can really help to stand up because then the energy can kind of flow from top to bottom much more easily. If you're curled up in the fetal position, it's much harder to feel anger than when you're standing up. Gestures might want to come in. So you want to go step by step here. When you're starting to feel that anger, feel into how it wants to move. Maybe the fists want to clench a little bit, right? Maybe that's that first step, to just lean into that anger just a little bit. You just clench the fist. Or maybe the jaw wants to clench. Maybe the shoulders want to tense, come up high. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do this. I'll go through the list. So there's clenching the fists, clenching the jaw is a good one. You can press your hands into each other. That's a good way of letting it start to move. So you can just you're essentially just trying to give the anger somewhere to go or something to push against. You can get a towel. If you get a towel and twist it, that again gives it something to move, and you can stay really in control. Or my favorite is to find a wall or a door frame or something solid and just put your palms against it. So imagine I'm standing up and I'm putting my palms against the wall. And then you want to almost massage that anger into the wall. You're pressing into it like, argh. And this lets you can really get your whole body behind it, really let that anger move and be felt and allowed, but it also helps you really stay in control. You'd be surprised at how effective that one is. If you start pressing against the wall, you suddenly notice your whole body activate, and it can really help the anger to come up. Then you can also use the breath. So often what I quite like to do is I inhale the anger as I'm breathing in. It's like anger. And then as I breathe out, I let some expression go. So movement or sound. So I might just then push away. It's like grrr. Staying present in the body when you're doing this. You wanna have your attention always where you're feeling the root or the source of that anger within you, the impulse to move. Or you can just breathe into the anger and just gently let it kind of expand and contract within you. Right? So breath can be useful here, and you can combine these, of course. You can press your hands against the wall and just kind of breathe in. And then when you breathe out, just pressing into the wall. And then when you breathe in, you're kind of just inhaling that anger. And then when you breathe out, you're pushing it into the wall. As you may have heard me making these grunts and groans, sound is really important here. So this is another way of allowing and embodying this anger. So grunts and growls, if you feel like that's what it wants to do, I'd encourage you to make that sound. Or often, words want to come. So it's saying, typically you'll hear it say like, fuck off or no. Typically, it tends to be quite simple, primal phrases. If you're getting really long, complicated phrases, you're not talking from that anger, you're talking from your mind. If you're trying to feel your anger and you're going, oh, well, it's just ridiculous you did that because, I was going to get the bus and then you said you were going to come by earlier and then that really confused. You're then in your mind. The anger just goes like, no, fuck off, stop. Basically, that's the core language it uses. And you can just say that to yourself in your mind if it wants to say that. That feels most comfortable. Or you can say it out loud. Like, no. Sometimes you may get like fantasies or images that want to play out in your mind. And these can be a little intense sometimes. And typically it's not the kind of thing we want to admit to that exists within ourselves. But often it can be like, wanting to beat someone up in some way. Or wanting to be quite violent towards others. And I'll talk a bit more about this later on. Now, obviously, don't beat people up or be violent towards them in real life. That's not what we want to be doing here. But it's important to let this expression come forward. So if that thought, that movie is coming forward, let it play out in your head, and let the feelings come in the body. Is maybe you're imagining that you're defending yourself from someone, right? And so you can let that movie play out in your mind, because that's the expression that needs to come through. And you can feel that in your body and let it move with the gestures I was talking about. And that's going to actually, paradoxically, by integrating that violent aspect of yourself, you will actually become less violent. Because when we repress that violence, when we deny it, when we don't acknowledge it within us, that's when it comes out sideways and we end up hurting other people. But through owning it, taking responsibility for it, and allowing it in our head and in our body, but not in the world, we actually integrate that. And that's then less likely to come out sideways because we've made it part of ourselves. So really, this is a thing. You really, what the goal of these gestures and postures and movements and breath and expression is to really just merge with the anger, become this part of you, and that includes being completely honest about what it wants to say and do. So often we deny our anger because it wants to say things that we kind of don't really agree with. It's like, part of you wants to tell your friend to fuck off because they did something that you don't like, and you're like, well, I don't want to tell my friend that. And in the real world, I understand that, and I would say don't do that in the real world necessarily. But it's important that we be really honest about the fact that this part of us right here, right now, this part of us that feels threatened and feels angry, wants to say fuck off to your friend. It's important to just be honest about what's true for you, for this part of you in this moment. And you'll feel a lot better because then you're not denying and rejecting yourself. And if you allow that movement, that anger to come and be felt and move through, you'll relax and your friend will no longer feel threatening. You won't be sort of have this awkwardness between you of when you're really lying about what you're feeling and what you're thinking and pretending everything's fine when it's not. Right? You won't build up resentment to your friend if you're really honest about what this angry part of you wants to say. And you don't get to choose what that is. This is critical. You don't get to choose whether or not you're angry. You don't get to choose whether or not this part of you wants to tell your friend to fuck off or not. You don't get to choose that there's a movie in your mind saying, okay, I want to kill everybody. I want to just everyone to, I just want to go mad and yell and scream at everybody. What you do get to choose is whether you allow that in yourself or act it out in the world. And I would suggest you take responsibility for it, allow those things in your mind and in your body, not acting them out in the world, and get really honest. And you'll feel a hell of a lot better, I promise you, if you're able to just be more honest about that. So when we're allowing the anger in this way, by putting our attention on it, letting it unfold as it wants to, letting the body move, letting the voice speak, letting the breath move in and out, the anger will flow in waves. So it'll come up, it'll intensify, there'll be a peak, and then suddenly there'll be a trough afterwards. And you just want to stay present with it until that peak. And then you can relax, take a moment, maybe resource yourself, reground yourself. And then you'll find that maybe another wave starts to come. And it tends to flow in these waves that you then want to ride. And the key thing is remember just to do your best to stay present and kind of in control. Again, it can be intense. There can be a lot of movement and a lot of intensity so long as you're present and staying in control. You may find, as you're doing this, you're going through these waves, underneath anger, there's always some sadness or some hurt. And you may find that the anger suddenly dissipates and that a whole load of sadness and hurt comes through. That's what the anger was protecting you from. At this point, you want to switch and do your best to go into the sadness and that hurt and to let that come forward, to cry, to sob, to feel sad. Because that's the real wound, the real pain that was deep down. And that's where the real healing will happen, when you integrate the anger, but then you also get access to what it was protecting you from, and you can feel that and start to heal that wound. Again, also, when you start really allowing that anger, you may notice the protector parts come in. You might start feeling numb. You might start feeling dissociated, disconnected. Again, if that happens, don't go into the anger any more deeply. Instead, take a step back and resource yourself, ground yourself, do what you need to do to be able to be present once more. Maybe this involves just distracting yourself. That's fine. And again, check out my resourcing video on that. So it may be the case that you can just get in touch with the anger and just feel it. For most people, it's probably not quite this simple. You'll find that you try to do it, but it doesn't quite work. You feel stuck. This is because there are protector parts. These are unconscious i.e. invisible parts of you, which have been programmed to treat anger as unsafe and to protect you from it. And we can't bulldoze these out the way. We can't will our way through. We need to support them to feel held and felt and seen and heard enough to relax. And then we can have access to that anger. So how we resist anger happens more ways than you would possibly imagine. At the level of thought, you may notice like self-doubt, for example. It goes, oh, but you doubt the situation. It's like, did they really mean that? I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong. Like, what am I doing here? That's, sometimes you might be in the wrong, but more often than not, this self-doubt comes in as a protection mechanism. You often get confusion, like confused questions. It's like, but why would they do that? What's going on? Why? I don't get why they would do such a, you get this confusion that comes in. Again, this is a way of deflecting from the anger. You don't care why they did that. You just want them to stop it. And you want to tell them, hey, no, that's stop. But that feels really unsafe to be so direct. So we go like, hey, why? What are you doing, man? Hey, what's going on? This is a deflection from the anger. Or we can have all kinds of, so there's sort of a false compassion that comes in. It's like, oh, I understand why he did what he did. And we may do so on an intellectual level, but this tends to typically be a way of deflecting from the anger. And you can't ever use compassion or understanding to get through anger. It doesn't work. All you're doing is repressing your anger and harming yourself in the process. True compassion arises when we've felt all the pain within us relating to a person or experience. If someone made us angry, the real way to forgive them is to feel all the anger and hurt to do with what that person did to us. And then there'll be no more pain to be triggered in our system. And with it, there will be genuine openness and forgiveness. A lot of the time we use compassion as a way of trying to understand the other person, which seems legit, and it is in many cases, but it's actually just a way to avoid our anger. At the level of the body, that's the main way we actually repress the anger. The thoughts are really more just excuses or rationales for why we're not going to go into the body. Tension is the main one. So the body will tense, or it'll freeze, or you'll feel really, really stuck. Often it feels like you've got the accelerator on and the brake on at the same time, because the anger's trying to come up and your body's this frozen, rigid shell trying to hold it all in. And it feels really horrible. And so if you feel horrible and like you're being torn in two ways at once, that's a sign that that's happening. Often you can get nausea that'll come up. So you'll start going towards your anger and suddenly you'll be, I can't tell you how many clients suddenly go, oh, I feel really nauseous all of a sudden. There's nausea in my belly, there's sickness. That's, for whatever reason, a way the body distracts us from the anger. Chronic pain is a classic one. If you have like chronic pain that's sort of unrelated, seemingly has no physical cause, that's often one way that the body distracts you from the anger. Another one is default emotions or secondary emotions. What this means is that when anger starts to come up, often before you even notice that anger is there, a secondary emotion comes in to cover it over. And the reason is because that secondary emotion feels much safer than the anger. So often you might start getting very teary and upset. This is a classic secondary emotion. So rather than get angry, it feels safer to get teary and upset and to get some relief from the emotions that way. But this will loop forever. You'll be stuck in being teary and upset forever. It'll never process through or integrate, because what's really happening is that you're really angry, and the purpose of the tears is only to distract and repress that anger. How do you actually work with these parts? If you notice that you're feeling tense, stuck, these confusion or nausea, sickness is coming in, that the teariness is starting to come in, notice that part and how it's manifesting. Discern where it is in your experience. Then it's key to allow the resistance. We want to go with it. So if the body's tense, you almost want to lean into that tension. If the body starts to feel a bit numb, this is another, I actually missed it. This is the most important one that I missed. Often numbness or dissociation. So you start to disconnect. You start to get foggy in the body. You can't discern what you're feeling. Can be quite dangerous to go too deeply into this. So if it starts to get really intense, I would back off and resource yourself. But if it's just mild, you can explore it a little bit. You want to get curious about that part. Let the body be tense or a little bit numb. Let that confusion be there or that nausea be there, and feel it. Which is, you do in the same way. You put your attention on it, you let it be itself, you let it move how it wants to, and you do your best not to resist it. You can then, as if, maybe you're feeling it, that might be enough to help it move through. So if that tension is saying, okay, you're feeling the tension of like, no, I can't get angry. You're letting it be tense. You're letting it say, no, 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 no. After a minute, it may start to relax, and that might be enough. If it's not, you can keep inquiring into it, get to know it a little bit better by asking it questions. It's like, what are you afraid is going to happen? You put your attention on it, go, what are you afraid is going to happen if I allow my anger? You might get, they're going to yell at me. You might get a memory from childhood. You might get some fear coming into the system. These are all answers that give you information. You could ask that part of you, if you had a voice, what would you say? You could ask it, what do you need? And by doing this, you're kind of seeing more and more aspects of this protector part. And the goal is to help it feel heard and seen and felt. So maybe it tells you, I'm afraid if I get angry, I'm afraid they'll yell at me. And what I would say is no, don't do it. Like, don't get angry. That's what it's saying to you. And what it needs is it needs a hug. Maybe it needs a hug. So you can let it tense, and you can go, no, don't do it. When you can imagine you're, coming to that younger part of you and giving it a hug. Oftentimes you can trace the origins of these parts, protector parts, back to some childhood memory. And then you can do some processing around the emotions to do with that memory. I won't go into that too much there, but there's a lot of depth to which you can go into allowing and inquiring into the resistance to the protector parts. But it's key just to heal them or meet them in some way. Then the flow, how you want to do it is you want to pendulate, which means go back and forth between the anger and the protector parts. So you might feel a little bit of anger, you feel some annoyance, it's like, grrr, you're letting it come in. Then you notice the body starts to go a bit numb. So you step back and you come and attend to the numbness. Maybe you put your hands on the numbness where you're feeling it. You just breathe in and out of the numbness. You're just supporting it, feeling it, being present with it. Not forcing it to change, letting it be itself. Then maybe that numbness starts to just relax a little bit. Then you can go back into the anger. Then some confusion starts to come in. Hey, no, what are you doing? You let that part feel confused. You feel the confusion. You allow it. Then that relaxes. And you go back into the anger. You kind of go back and forth. And in this way, you're making yourself more flexible. You're practicing. And the more you can go in and out of the anger, the safer and more open it'll be. So to summarize, you would start by resourcing and grounding yourself, taking a few minutes. Then you're going to invite in the anger. Maybe you imagine that event last week, that kid playing music on their phone on the bus. And then you find that moment where it triggers you. Then maybe you can feel some of that anger. It's like you're pressing against the wall, like, but then you notice the protector part comes in, starts feeling tense. So you let it be tense and you say, what are you afraid is going to happen? It's not safe. That they're going to get angry at me. They're going to yell. The kid's going to hit me. I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. So you go, okay, it's okay. I understand. You let this part of you be afraid. You let it tense. Maybe you trace it back to there's a memory of being in the playground. You felt that same fear. You go to that memory. You feel that fear. You let it move through. Then maybe it relaxes. There's a bit more space to feel the anger again. Then maybe you start going a bit numb. You go back to the resource. You ground yourself again, right? Or maybe your body feels like, okay, I've had enough for today. You just feel your feet on the floor, bring the hands to support. Whatever technique you want to bring in, there could be many. That's like a rough idea of how it goes. I did that very quickly. That might happen over 10, 15 minutes or longer. But this is kind of an idea of the flow. You can tell you're doing it right, typically because it feels good in some way. It can be challenging, it can be intense, but it feels like you're in the right place. It feels like a bit of a relief to finally say no and to let that energy be felt and be allowed in your body. That's a great sign. Also, after certain waves of anger have peaked and gone through, you might notice a spaciousness. Like it feels like something is dissolved. Often there can be a sense of strength or solidity. These are all great signs that you've integrated that anger and it's converted or transmuted into spaciousness, relaxation, or strength and solidity, firmness. What do you do when you're triggered? Say you're in a meeting, you get really angry. How do you work with it in that context? Very briefly, you don't want to try, unless you're really skilled at this stuff, you want to wait until you have a private moment to process the anger. So just kind of, use the protector parts. That's why they exist. Protect yourself from the anger, hold it in, but acknowledge it. Okay, I'm noticing I'm angry. Acknowledge it, but hold it in. After the meeting's over, you can go to a toilet cubicle or you can go home. If whatever situation, find some place, your private home or bedroom or a toilet somewhere or a corner of a park where no one can see you. And that's when you want to let the anger come up and go through the steps I talked about. It can be really helpful to try and process your anger quickly after it's, once you notice it, because when you're getting triggered, it's a really brilliant opportunity to process and heal some of this anger that's coming up to be felt. But typically, it's best to find your own private space when you have a bit of time. It doesn't take too long. You can be helpful to even take 5 minutes. If you're at the office, take 5 minutes to hide in the toilet cubicle and just feel a bit of rage. That'll be worth it. It'll take the edge off and you'll feel better. Because when we're trying to hold it in, we feel incredibly dysregulated. It's really horrible. We just feel really stuck. A few things you might notice as you go through this process. If you do this regularly, if you sit down regularly to get in touch with your anger, or if you're regularly working with your triggers, you'll find that you get more and more confident with anger. It feels more and more safe to be present with it and allow it. And it feels better and better actually to really allow it. But what your nervous system's getting more open. You'll notice then that your nervous system goes, oh, great. Now I can start getting rid of the rest of the anger down here. Because you would not believe how much anger there really is down there. I promise you, it's 100 times more than you would ever imagine. It's like every single moment where you ever wanted to say no or set a boundary, every single moment where you couldn't allow that, that's still within you somewhere. And you may find that the nervous system starts offloading some of this anger in quite a spontaneous way. Just you'll be walking down the street and you'll suddenly feel anger starting to surge through you. This is normal. This is just the body learning, okay, now I can offload the anger. It's safe, and it'll start letting that come up. Or you can be very, very sensitive to triggers in this period. It's weird. It's paradoxical. You start feeling more and more of your anger, but you actually get more and more angry during the day because you're so sensitive. These are all good signs. It's good signs that the anger is coming up to be felt. It's a good sign that you're becoming more sensitive. It means you're less numb to your anger. And there's just a period of time where it can be a little intense, but it will start to flatten out over time if you keep doing the work, keep meeting the anger. It'll get more and more balanced and you'll feel better and better. And exactly what happens, the consequences, the benefits of this work, go check out the first video. Another one is that as you start to gain more access to your boundaries, to your strength, you might be empowered to stand up for yourself a bit more. Other people in your family and your friends might not like the new you that's a bit more solid and assertive and a bit more boundaried and more stably in themselves. So don't expect everyone to like it. But the more you work with your anger, the more it's okay that other people don't like it. And that doesn't trigger you. The more it's like, okay, they can just think that and that's fine. Whew! Okay. Great stuff. I do have a whole blog on repressed anger that goes into, if you prefer to read this, I'll link that down below. And I work with people one-on-one, helping them to do this kind of work, to feel their feelings, to work with protector parts, to feel safe enough to connect to the body, all that jazz. So there's some links below if you want to get in touch with me about that. And I will see you next time. Any questions, just write me a comment. I do my best to respond to them all. And I'll see you later.